Hi everyone, I hope you're all enjoying your new controller. Of course you're not, that's why you're watching this video. Over the past month I've been uploading videos in the attempt to set realistic expectations when you got your controller. That day has come and gone, and I've read countless threads on Steam and down in the comments of people struggling with understanding or getting used to this controller. Valve could have made things a little bit easier in learning how to use this controller, but believe me when I say that what you have now is much better than what we had 2 weeks ago. Here's the format for this series. I'll fit in as many different scenarios into an episode as I can, with each episode focusing on one genre of game. I'd like to do more, but today's episode will be FPS games, and I'll do what I can to get 1 to 2 videos uploaded each day. This keeps the view length down and allows me to help you out on a single issue you may be having. So let's get into it. FPS games are what I see a lot of people having issues with, so I'll walk you through a few different configurations. Feel free to use what best suits you. If you like using an analog stick for FPS, I wouldn't try to use analog emulation here. It'll be vastly different than what you're used to. In my opinion, you're better off just learning how to use trackball mode, and I'll explain why this is. Most of the time, I'll leave my game's mouse sensitivity on default, then in big picture mode I'll drop the right pad sensitivity down a click. Going into advanced settings, I set my trackball friction to low, keep acceleration off, and change sensitivity vertical scale so I have a higher vertical movement ratio over horizontal movement. I use this for games that are more popular on consoles, as enemy and level design is crafted around an experience where it's easier to sweep along mostly flat horizontal planes, rather than trying to snap to targets and buildings above you. A good example of this type of game is Borderlands. We rarely need to aim at targets above or below us, and when we do, they're distant enough to where aiming requires much less surface area on the pad. I turn haptics intensity on high, or medium if that's too loud for you, as low tends to leave my thumb feeling lost on the pad. If you've already tried this and found yourself running out of surface area on the pad, but don't want to crank up your sensitivity to sacrifice accuracy, then the setting you're going to want to play around with is called Edge Spin Radius. This takes the outer ring of the right pad and turns it into an analog input. As the description on Steam states, when outside a determined radius on the pad, the mouse will continue to send input in the specified direction. This can take a lot of tweaking to find a setting that plays well for you, but both edge spin speed and sensitivity will determine how fast your pad will spin when outside your set radius. I really don't like how Valve moved rotation to the advanced settings page, as before we had a nice visual to represent what this slider does. Basically, moving the slider to the right changes our flick angle to a more vertical one, and to the left brings it back to a horizontal position. This is all based on how big your hands are and how you position your thumb on the pad. For me, I have small to medium-sized hands, so my horizontal sweeps tend to travel in an upward motion. Here you can see how far to the right my slider is currently set. Let's talk about movement. This is incredibly game dependent, as some games will provide better simultaneous gamepad and mouse support. If it does, like Borderlands here, use the left analog stick as a joystick move style of input. The output is set to left joystick. However, if you're not so lucky and your game doesn't support a gamepad at all, we'll be setting the controller style of input to a directional pad, and WASD to the appropriate directions. Requires click should be set to off, and make sure you turn overlap directions on. You can set a dead zone if you want to use the D-pad as your movement input, but I don't recommend this until you've gotten used to the controller. If your preferred FPS contains a larger arsenal, meaning 4 or more weapons, it may be useful to go into mode shifting for your left D-pad. From here we can bind directions as number keys. So when holding the left grip, our left pad's direction will input 1 through 4, going clockwise. Squeezing the right grip will set our right pad's directions to 5 through 8 in the same direction. An alternative is to just use the bumpers as scroll wheel directions, or the D-pad set to this as well. Where applicable, I try to use the dual stage triggers to double up on functions. In Valve's video where they showed Wolfenstein, you'll recall how they talked about aiming down sights and firing on the same trigger. To do this, select your right trigger, set full pull action to either mouse 1 or the Xbox's right trigger, then soft pull action to mouse 2. Or the Xbox's left trigger. Soft pull trigger style should be set to hip fire normal, and consider playing around with the sliders. Squeezing the trigger softly will bring up the iron sights, and holding the squeeze, then clicking, will fire the weapon. Hip fire normal means we can rapidly squeeze and click the trigger to bypass the aiming down sight, and go straight to shooting. This frees up our left trigger for things like melee, jump, or throw grenade. So I hope this really helps you guys. If you have any other concerns, put them down in the comments and I'll try to help you out. I'll be covering third-person games next, and which analog settings you'll find most comfortable.